So welcome everybody. This is TRiRODS during our virtual stay-at-home season. So Jaspreet Gill is going to talk about our 7th generation build and test infrastructure here at RINC. And she can tell you all about herself first. Go for it, Jaspreet.
Hello everybody, this is Jaspreet Gill, and I am the automation engineer for iRODS Consortium and the architect for the 7th generation build and test infrastructure. I joined the iRODS team in around maybe 2017, I would think. And I have been working with the infrastructure ever since. When I joined the iRODS team, they were on, I think, generation 5, where they were using Jenkins, Python, Ansible, and zone bundles, and with running everything on vSphere VMs. That very time, I think Ben was owning the infrastructure, and he was struggling with how to test plugins. I think that's when the audit plugin came into existence, and he was struggling with how to test it in the 5th generation infrastructure. And that's where I come in, and my suggestion was that we should use 2 parameterized Jenkins jobs, one to build iRODS as well as the plugins, and the other job was to be the one that tested the iRODS core as well as the plugins. So that's where the 6th generation came in, which started in spring of 2017. And then when the old team left, the new team came in, and they were not adjusting to the fact that our tests took some 8 hours. That's when we decided that it would be nice to move to something newer. And that's when the idea of the 7th generation started coming into our minds, which was just using Jenkins, Python, and Docker containers. I'm gonna go to the next slide. And this architecture was actually designed last year itself, where we decided to Dockerize Jenkins instead of Jenkins running on VM itself. With the Dockerized Jenkins, you can actually, every time a security upgrade is done to the Jenkins container, you can actually basically update that security in no time. And then in the previous generations, the configurations and the setup were not in Git. Now we have basically put the whole of the configuration for Jenkins as well as the way tests are as well as the jobs are in the Git. So according to this architecture, we launch sibling Docker containers from the Jenkins container itself. We first build OS images, and these OS images, even though we do get those from the intraweb, but we have created our own OS images, because by default, the plain OS images do not come with Python or Git or other things that we require for iRODS building as well as testing it. And then we build those iRODS packages in the containers, but we save those packages in the host machine for now, but we are going to be looking at something else, like a repository container that we could use that across our test environment. And then once those packages are created, we basically use another container, the base OS image container, to deploy those packages and then run the tests on that particular container. Those tests could be core tests or plugins, topology, or federation. The development, so the core team is actually using this particular infrastructure, and they have it set up on their own machines, and they use it to run tests before they merge everything into the iRODS repository. So the development CI would look almost similar to the production continuous integration build and test infrastructure. So that is a pretty good thing, that you could move from development as well as to production with the same infrastructure. And ever since I've joined, I've made several promises, and in those promises have been, some of them have been, I have fulfilled those promises, some of them. One is increase coverage, that is, we've added several plugins. And then the next one, I had promised one time that we should move the pipeline scripts to GitHub, and no logic should stay in Jenkins. We basically even put the Jenkins configuration in GitHub, not just the pipeline scripts and the jobs. And we used to get some false reds because of PyVMommy, that's a plugin that's a wrapper for vSphere. So we address that inconsistency by just removing the vSphere layer and Ansible out of the picture. I had promised that I would containerize Jenkins, which is already done, and now it's easier to test, update, and redeploy. And I said I would move away from VMs and maybe to containers, which has already happened. There are, it is considerably faster if you are just running the core tests, but it hasn't become faster as of now, not right now. I will let you guys know why it hasn't become faster. The things that we wanted to do was parallelize the jobs. That hasn't happened. Continuous integration isn't happening right now because this particular infrastructure is still in the making. We haven't finished it yet 100%, and we haven't made iRODS Jenkins public even now. I think once the 7th generation is completed, almost like 99%, and we are confident it's working the way we want it to work, we will make iRODS Jenkins public. For the 4.2.8 release cycle, what we decided was like the ICAD database should run on its own container for every test, because in production, mostly people have their ICAD database running on a different machine than on the iRODS server machine. So it made sense, and since we were moving to containers, it was easier to separate those two concerns. The reason why we moved to a serialized workflow is when we were trying to test the parallelized job, we found out that the Docker by default creates like max 31 networks. And with so many jobs that we would have, so many tests that we would have run in parallel, including the topology plugins, federation, as well as the core test, they would have reached a max of, Docker would have reached a max of 31 networks in no time. GitHub, we also noticed that if you were an unauthorized user, then you could only make 60 calls to GitHub, and we were seeing rate limit exceeded exceptions because we are cloning our plugins to build plugins to even test those plugins as well. Since we've parallelized our core tests, we are calling GitHub a lot many times than we should. We need to optimize that. We are also learning, the whole team is learning about Docker. I think it's a vast world that we still are learning something new every time. For this particular release, we've added Ubuntu 18, Ubuntu 16 and CentOS 7 are also being supported. The databases supported are Postgres, SQL, MySQL, and MariaDB. We are mostly testing MySQL, but there is an option that you could test MariaDB also with this particular infrastructure, and Oracle. The number of core test suites per OS per database when I counted was around 65, and the plugins that are being tested are around 12. For topology, we have 4 combinations. The tests are being run on the provider as well as the consumer with either SSL enabled or disabled. And then we have an upgrade topology test where you could run 2 combinations, that is tests on the provider as well as on the consumer after upgrading iRODS from a previous version to 4.2.8. And then for federation, we just have 1 combination, that is for now, we can only have 2 zones with federation that runs 4.2.8 and 4.2.8. We don't have anything for backwards compatibility right now, but that's in the making. Oh, hold on, sorry. Okay. So the best part about this particular infrastructure is that if you are writing your own proprietary plugin, or you are wanting to contribute a plugin to our iRODS consortium, you see we already have several workflows like audit plugin, test workflow, collection, mtime plugin, test workflow. You could actually go in and create your own workflow for this, for your own plugin, by just replicating one of the existing workflows by clicking on new item and then just copying one of these workflows. Seems like my wireless doesn't want, my click doesn't want to work, so I'm just going to go back to this. So for the serialized workflow, we have, say if you were to run against one operating system, one database, and you say, suppose you mentioned that you are going to run tests in parallel. So for iRODS core tests, we still have some parallelism. So that test parallelism 4 suggests that there are going to be 4 tests running, and that means we'll have like 8 containers launched because the ICAD database gets its own container. And for a single plugin, we'll have 2 containers launched. For a federation, since we have 2 providers, so we have 4 containers getting launched, and for topology, we'll have some 5 containers. So parallelism still exists, but that is only for core tests. But every other test, like core test plugins and federation topology, all run in serialized mode. So in the future, like I said, iRODS needs to be publicly accessible so that the consortium members can look at what we are doing, and they can have confidence in what we are saying to them. And we need to investigate scaling out, maybe Kubernetes or Docker Swarm, because if you want to reduce the speed of testing for us, and we need to figure out how to scale out. Parallelism is going to be achieved if we figure out how to use Kubernetes or Docker Swarm. And we still want to increase our coverage. There are certain plugins that have not yet been even looked at. So that is what we are still working on, as well as federation needs more coverage. Conformance testing is one thing that we need to look at. This would actually give us more, so like for Sanger and other clients, they would have, so they take some time when they have to upgrade their systems. So if we are able to conformance test and test their use cases and their edge cases on our particular system, they would be easily be eager to upgrade. And this particular infrastructure can be used by our community developers, and it would give them the confidence that we are doing what we are saying. And this could be an acceptance criteria for them too. They could run their own tests on this particular system. But before even we can make this approachable for usable for the community developers, we need to find a way on how to have our secrets saved in a elegant manner. Right now we have it saved somewhere in Rensive, which is not a good architecture. So we will be looking at maybe Vault or something of that sort, that we have our secrets in this part of this particular infrastructure. Having a container that has secrets in would be a much better solution than what we have right now. So with that, I think I am done with the presentation. And if you have questions and if you haven't understood what I've said, I will try to repeat it again.
Excellent. Thank you, Jaspreet. Do we have any questions from anybody who's connected? Most of us see this every day. Go ahead, Don.
Overall, did you notice any difference in your testing flow when you switched to containers? Increased storage overhead or anything sluggish?
So the thing is, it all depends on what, how powerful your machine is. The team members, have you seen that the number of hours that they've had to wait has reduced for them, at least for the core tests, not the whole test suite. So it has been an improvement. Like earlier, we had to wait for like 8 hours for the whole test suite to run. Now, at least the core test may, depending on how strong your machine is, it can actually give you like, maybe you can run those tests in 2 to 3 hours. So that has been a great improvement for us. Did that answer your question or no?
Yes, I'm good.
Thank you.
All right. Anybody else? All right. Well, normally we would clap for you, but you can't hear us, so we're all clapping. Thank you, Jaspreet, and we will get this online pretty soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you.